There once was an elusive hamster-like creature that I had only caught a few glimpses of here in the Doki Doki forest. I didn't know where they came from or who they were. All I knew was that they were very shy. Until one day, Evelyn Rose, the fairy, flew over to their home in the tree hollow and introduced herself. The two wandered into a field of endless dandelions where they sat together and chatted. The little creature became so comfortable, Evelyn Rose was able to call me over to join them. What a joy to meet this little beastie. And now, when we see each other, they no longer run or hide, but instead lift a tiny paw in a friendly wave. Okay, so let's get into how this creature came to be in the first place. So, lately, I've been taking a little bit of a break from the usual journaling and illustrating and that sort of thing, and I felt like focusing on something else. And that something else happened to be clay. Now, clay is a medium that I really enjoy using. I go back to it on and off, and even when I first started Doki Doki Forest, back when I was mostly on Instagram, I was working with clay and making little dragons and creatures and that sort of thing. Now, at the time, I was using polymer clay, and in this video, you can see that I'm using an air dry clay, and that's something that I am not as familiar with, but I'm enjoying it. I wanted to do something familiar and yet something new. So although I've worked with clay, the air dry clay is something new for me. And it gets the fingers a little bit messy, which I'm not used to, but I do like that you can add some water and smooth it out and get rid of like little cracks and things that appear on the clay. So I really was enjoying this. And this all came about because I was watching a miniature artist named Yubisakichan, and her channel, I will link that down below, where she makes all kinds of miniatures and animal dolls, and I was fascinated. So she's a big fan of calico critters. I don't know if you remember those little animals that you could get. They were little toys. Back in the day, we called them either Sylvanian families or Mapletown. I had both of them growing up, figures from both series, and I still have them now. And I also have some calico critters. But they're really cute little animals. They wear clothes and, you can dress them in different things. And they have the houses and you can buy all the miniatures and really, really cool. So I was watching Yubisaki's channel and I just became fascinated by the way she was making these animal dolls. So she was my jumping off point, my inspiration. And sort of, I was watching what she was doing and I was like, okay, I'm going to try my hand at that. And I did wind up doing things a little bit different along the way because certain things were not coming out at all, the way her things were coming out. Her animals were coming out beautiful and, well, mine was coming out a little bit wonky, but that's to be expected. I've never done this sort of thing before. I've made figures, but I've never made anything with the intent for it to be able to move, to have some sort of articulation, and also to have some sort of a fur. So that's new territory for me. And what I liked about the way she was creating her figures was that she didn't use sewing to attach the fur. She only used glue. So I loved that because I am not a sewer by any stretch of the imagination. So using glue to attach things is a win-win for me. So I knew I wanted to make a little hammy, a little hamster, and you can't really tell what the heck I'm doing here, but I just keep adding to the cheeks. So the original figure I had, I was like, but hamsters have like really cute cheeks. And I'm thinking of those teddy bear golden hamsters, those really fluffy, fuzzy ones. So we definitely have to get those cheeks in order, and then I'm making the little muzzle, the little nose here. Not quite the little nose yet, but the little muzzle, the little like mouth. It looks really weird to begin for sure. Oh, and before I go on, I do want to mention that Evelyn Rose, the fairy who you saw in the video in the beginning, she was created by Julia over at Dora and Ducky, Julia's Fairies and Fox, and I will have her channel linked below too. She makes gorgeous fairies, speaking of someone who can sew. Gorgeous fairies with beautiful clothes, and she often has fairies up for adoption, so you can go and check out her YouTube page as well as her Instagram and see if there are any fairies looking for homes. And now back to clay. So there's the little nose getting attached here, and you just kind of try to smooth out the edges and get it to blend in there. And the clay sort of dries out as you use it, which I'm not used to, because again, with polymer clay, you don't have to worry about the clay drying out. In fact, it's very dry sometimes to begin with. It's not always dry. I should say my clay was a little old, my polymer clay, so I had to work with it for a while to get it to soften up and become really pliable and usable again. And the air dry clay, right when you take it out of the package, it's so soft and ready to go. Now polymer clay, you have to bake, whereas air dry clay, you can guess by the name, it just air dries, which is really nice. You don't have to worry about, overcooking it, for example, like you do with polymer clay. You don't want to overcook that sort of thing. The air dry clay, you do want to be sure you keep in a Ziploc bag, your leftover clay, because it will dry out. So now we're giving this hammy some little ears, and it looks quite fox-ish. When I was looking at this, I was like, I don't know, this does not really look like a hamster, right? I don't know. And then I'm putting in the holes so I can put the little glass bead eyes in there later. And they're not even. It's really hard to do things like that, to get like even eyes and all that sort of thing, but I was thinking of this as an experiment. And I didn't film, but there's the body. So you just see this weirdly shaped, looks like a puzzle piece, and I'm just holding the head up and thinking, yep, I think that will work because the body's going to get covered anyway. And then once the air dry clay was dry, and I gave it a few days, and it goes from being this grayish color to a white when it's dry. And then I'm just painting it. And I painted it white, and then I don't really think I had to paint it white because it was already white, but I sort of just did that anyway. And then I'm just trying to apply some hamster colors. I'm thinking that most of this is going to be covered by fur, which is what I'm doing now. And I am just following along as best as I can with what Yubisakichan is doing. She would put the glue on, and then she was using this yarn that was very furry, and she would actually glue the fur down and start at the bottom, and she would work her way up to the top, let it dry, and then she would cut off the ends there. So like where you would see the yarn at the end, I don't know what you call that, but she would trim it so you just see the little fur. But I was like, I don't know, this is not really looking nice, but oh, so here we are. So once it dries, then you cut off all these little, I am sorry I didn't really put this in the center. Here we go, that looks better. You trim off all these little like nubby bits that you might normally like glue down, and then you're just left with the fur, which you can then trim and make as short as you want so it looks more kind of like a flocked kind of figure, or you can leave it longer to get a furry, fluffier figure. But mine, my gosh, I mean, this got fur everywhere, but I just felt like mine was kind of a hot mess, but the eyes are going in, and that really helps bring the creature to life. And then I was like, this fur is too short. I want the fur to be longer than this. I didn't really like how it looked patchy, and I was not satisfied with the way it was turning out. So I decided to do things a little bit differently and just kind of wing it. Okay, here is Hammy all completed. Ooh, it took a little work to get here. I followed the tutorial, of course, as best as I could, but then I made a few slight changes as I went along. I had cut that yarn so short on the face, and at first on the body I did the same thing. I attached the yarn the exact same way, and I just thought it was too thin or short. I don't know. I'm going to keep playing around with it. I'm sure it's just an error on my part, just doing something new. But what I decided worked for this particular creation was to just glue the yarn with the seam side down, and then I had a lot of fluff. And inside the body we have that air dry clay. Then I made 2 holes going across the body, one going up, and I put pipe cleaners in there. And that, of course, was watching the video, and then attaching these little air dry paws that I sculpted, and they're just attached with glue, but you can bend them and pose the little Hammy a little bit. Probably should have let those pipe cleaners have a little more length. I trimmed them a little short. Hammy does not stand on their own, but you can always prop them up. Now the head is articulated as well. It is not glued on, so it can actually pop off. And then we wanted to get some extra plushy, so we have that air dry clay inside, and I wrapped a quilt batting around the center to really kind of add some plumpness to this Hammy. This is a well-fed Hammy. And then on top I glued the yarn seam side down. And I am so sorry I did not film most of the work, or any of the work I did with the body, and that was because it was such a disaster and I almost just gave up. It's one of those things maybe you have to walk away from, and I don't know if I would have given up. That might be a little dramatic, but it was rough going where I wasn't sure if this was going to be a complete fail. So I apologize, I did not film. But you can see I also added this little piece of fur on top. I cut a little oval out, glued it on, and trimmed the fur. It was very long white fur, so I just gave that a little bit of a trim. Now on the face you can see where I left the fur short, how it originally was. And then I also added some more yarn pieces on the side and the top and the back to really just get that extra fluff. But I wanted to be able to see the eyes if possible, so I left the hair short there. So here we go. We have our little Hammy articulated, my very first little creature art doll, first of many I think, and I would like to make a lot more of these in the future, especially where there's no sewing involved, unless you want to. If you want to make clothes, or if it's easier for you to sew the fabric on, if you have fur fabric and you want to use that. But I just love the fact that I could just use clay and some yarn and some fabric and just glue that right on there, and just grab some pipe cleaners and really clever stuff. So thank you so much to Yubisakichan, who inspired me for sure with her tutorial. I'm very appreciative of that. And I do have some more things like this I would like to share with you. I have another creature that has the clay head and paws, but the inside I think I'm going to use a wire to attach, so I'll be sharing that. I have another polymer clay creature I will be sharing with you, and of course I'll be doing journaling and that sort of thing as well. I haven't given up on that, and I thank you very much for allowing me to share something a little different with you all. I really appreciate it. And now please stay tuned for a little video.